Welcome to the Foul Play YouTube channel. This is a powder puff introduction to Brandon's Brigade. So, I want to start a little bit of a discussion here on what this is and what it's going to look like. And
And Sean.
yes, Sean gave me this idea, and then I kind of grabbed the ball and ran with it, but I want him to guide me in some ways with this because I think it was a really good idea to try to start conversations on Brendan. And we can be bringing up anything during our discussions, anything Brendan. So, Sean, would you want to add to this a little information on like different directions we might go with this?
Okay, absolutely. Thank you all for joining us this evening in London. I'm the Wizard. Glad to be part of what will hopefully become a new channel for the Foul Play team. I thought it'd be nice to concentrate on Brendan. There's been a lot of attention thrown at Stephen, but Brendan's sorely overlooked, I feel, and I think absolutely anything Brendan related that kind of you might have a query about, or anything like that. Well, we'd like to think that you could bring it here and mention it. We want to talk, we want to discuss it. Anything to do about Brendan, really, and the situation he finds himself in.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's, I think, a very much needed as far as the discussions in this area because there's a lot of stuff that comes up in conversations pertaining to Brandon that's never really truly focused on different aspects of this case. But I think that this will be good. It'll be a good opening up for people, to, like I said before, let's redirect any negative energies we might have pertaining to this case with Brendan and what took place, and direct it towards, let's have some more information out there and some more discussions and share things.
The intention for me, Sammy, was to make a bit of a concerted effort, if I could, to really make a shout for Brendan and
Yes.
what's happened to him, where he finds himself now, and the total injustice of it all. Because that's the very simplest way to put it.
Absolutely, it is.
What has happened to but Brendan had his life stolen from him at 16 years old by two experienced law enforcement officers who should have known better. They are family men, and what they done that day is unforgivable. Brendan should not be where he is, and
I agree
I think,
1,000%.
I think the less
Absolutely.
I say about, I won't talk about Governor Evers because I'll get upset. Um, and it's up to us. I
But
believe
see,
it's up to us to make a real effort to try and make some international, worldwide noise about Brendan. And people say that making a murderer brought a lot of attention to it. Well, I want to see if we can kickstart something that really gets a movement rolling, really, because in my view, Brendan Dassey is a modern day Nelson Mandela.
they took a teenager and put him on the chopping block.
And never been in any trouble with the police in his life. He's just an innocent kid who's bullied by his brothers growing up, bullied at school growing up, and then when Stephen was targeted for the Teresa Holback investigation, he was bullied by law enforcement.
Yes.
All he knows is bullying and prison, and that's fucking wrong.
It
Sorry about
is.
my language.
It is. That's putting it mildly.
So what we got Liger and Arspender did to Brendan really is absolutely unforgivable.
It is. It is. Well, when you look back at this whole thing, how everything transpired, that's a whole big ball of yarn.
Yeah, I mean, I see it. I'm a reformed character. I have a history myself with the police, the judicial system. I have a prison record. I've reformed over the last 30 years. I'm a different person today. And what really, really makes me angry is the way that they took Brendan, they isolated him, they took an initial story that he gave them, told him he was lying, chewed that story up, threw it back at him, and made him repeat it, but in a way that they created. And it is
Exactly.
just an absolute abhorrence. It's a crime against nature what they done to that boy. It really is evil. It's
Well, they would
evil,
never
and I'm
get away with it
accusing.
in today's day and age. They would never
Well,
have
I
gotten
would
away with
hope
it.
not. I would hope not. I mean, you would think today that there would be greater protections worldwide for children in police custody. And if there aren't, there should be, because they are manipulated and they are abused all the time. And, that goes on everywhere, even on the streets, they're harassed. And I mean, some of them deserve it. So, you call it upon yourself. But generally, no, what they done to Brendan was totally undeserved. It was a nail in Stephen's coffin. That's all it was. It was the fire. In fact, they didn't have any nails. So Brendan provided them with a bag of nails to put the lid on Stephen's coffin.
Oh, yes. Oh,
And
yes.
that's the way I see it. They targeted Brendan, and that's the purpose for their targeting Brendan. And that's their only purpose, was to seal Stephen's fate.
Mm-hmm.
Evil. It's an absolutely evil act. It's not just Liger and Arspender, it's Pagel and it's Kratz and it's Fallon and it's Gart and it's all of them. They've all done it. They've all contributed to it in some small way, and they are all as responsible as each other for Brendan being where he is. It's shameful act shameful, disgraceful.
Well, we know we have Linda Kay does a podcast on the positive side of Brendan, and I think that's fabulous. I think that's good. But here we are going to be discussing things that come up pertaining to Brendan, his life, his case, and what took place. Go ahead.
That piss you off. That shouldn't be done. That is all wrong. All kinds of wrong. No moral compass about it. That's what this is about.
Yes, it is. Exactly.
Can we start with O'Kelly? I suppose we shouldn't, but that's yeah.
A whole lot.
You will never hear me laughing when that name is mentioned.
Oh, I'm not laughing. That's a snide little.
No, I know, Linda. I know where you're coming from, but it's just.
Well, look, when we look at this, we can see the blatantly obvious stuff in the interviews. We get that. But then there's other things that have gone on in the background that we have discovered or people know about or are aware of that there's no details provided. It is actually hidden and kept from society. And for some reason, there's some code of silence about certain things that shouldn't be. And I just honestly feel like this was an absolutely perfect way to branch out and to cover more about Brandon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The injustice the injustice is on an, I wouldn't say an industrial scale, it's an institutional scale. It's the institution of Wisconsin was used to save face. And
that doesn't even fit on the scale.
Brendan was used by the institution of Wisconsin, and that is disgraceful. because they still trying to keep it down, and it's wrong. Brendan
Well,
Dassey needs to be released.
Sean, I have to disagree with you. It's more than a little institutional scale. It doesn't even fit on a scale. I've never in my life seen child abuse like this, or the blatant disregard of following, your words to evidence that comes from your words. Okay, so if you talk about Brendan, who had a language and learning disability, he was like, what was it? I just heard last night, like 20% of that conversation they had on those days, he put about 20% of the words in. That's something wrong there. And these are intelligent human beings, supposedly doing a good investigation, supposedly for the sake of Teresa Halbach. Well, they screwed up from the minute they started.
Well, for a medal-winning investigation, I certainly must say Mark Uyghur looked extremely frustrated during the interview on the day following the O'Kelly interview at Calumet or wherever it was that he was being held. That was just this absolutely disgraceful display. Mark Uyghur isn't losing patience with he's losing total patience with Brendan, but he knows he's on camera now, so he can't, Brendan's, they're rotten. They are all rotten.
Really, the most amazing thing to me is the lack of corroboration of Brendan's story. There are many people that confess. The guy that confessed to killing Teresa a few months ago in prison. If you can just take a confession, just the words, and not corroborate absolutely anything, I mean, it just makes no sense. I don't see how he got convicted.
Well, that's a really noticeable thing in wrongful convictions, is that the evidence doesn't match the statements. They don't dig into it and do that. If they would, there would be a lot less people in prison, because evidence does not match. Even their words coming from his mouth, things don't match. So if we're going to start with Brendan, they sourced out Brendan. They went through everybody, figured nobody's going to flip. Let's go with Brendan. Well, Brendan has a IEP in school, which I'm sure they were aware of. They watched him. They probably, noticed, that cop up there with the tick, 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 tick when he's interviewing there, that turn signal tick. He probably noticed that Brendan was a little bit easier to sway, and allowed that information to be passed along somewhere along the line. And they went from there.
That was Detective O'Neill.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, make no mistake about it, people. As you are listening to this, I am here to tell you this will not be a pity party for Brandon. This is Brandon's Brigade. And I mean, we have people here that have fury and passion for the truth. And we want to expose that right here, right now. No more playing around. No more bullshit. And all of this crap fell on the shoulders of the investigators and law enforcement to do a proper investigation. Nothing lined up. None of his statements lined up. There was actually zero physical evidence.
There is the only, in Stephen's case, you've got the bullet, the car, all of the bones, the searching, the dogs, everything like that, the vehicles, in Brendan's case, the only evidence is his statement.
It's not even his statement.
Of course,
Yeah.
When we was talking earlier in the earlier podcast about how the police shaped their questioning to create a statement in a certain way. They establish a framework, and then they go back and they add detail to it. But the framework remains the same. It's the detail that changes. Now, what they've done, particularly in the case of Brendan, is they've been very clever about how they've managed that. And with the framework, she was shot in the head, burned, tied up with the handcuffs and shit like that, throat cut, stabbed, hair, all of that. They don't go back to that. What they do is they look for details to add to the comments, and that's where they trap Brendan. But there is no evidence to support any of what he's saying. Nothing.
Well,
and in
I kind of
light
gotta disagree. I kind of gotta disagree because even the en banc judges said, "Well, did any of his statements bring you evidence?" They said, "Yes, a bullet." Okay, so there is, according to them, there isn't none.
Yeah.
But that was the only thing they made him say, and then that was only to make sure Stephen was convicted. Okay,
Yeah.
they had to have him say it. So they used their words through Brendan's mouth to get not only Stephen convicted, but to Brendan.
Well,
so
yeah, you never said it. That was them releasing the control question.
Well, there's another one, the control question. Do you not think that the kid was scared when Fassbender said, "Oh, so you're disagreeing with me?" "Oh, no, I'm not." "Oh, okay, well, then you agree with me?" "Well, yeah." I mean, come on. How are you supposed to have a controlled question, supposed to be telling the truth, when actually, if they would have just sat there and let him talk, they probably wouldn't have gotten much out of him at all, instead of feeding him everything. And we still got Fox Hills. What did they do to him that night?
There's too much.
There's that one statement that's made where they say, "Oh, don't worry, Brendan. We're not going to get in your face like we did last time." Well, where's last time? Wait, what happened last time? That would have had to have been at Fox Hills.
In my view,
so what went on there?
Yeah.
They've dropped themselves in it. Oh, have I gone quiet again?
You're here.
No.
Okay. They drop themselves in it when they talk about, "Oh, we're not going to get in your face again. Think about the video." Shit like that. What is all that about? Why is none of that documented anywhere else? Why is it only mentioned during the questioning? Because the questioning in the interview room under the video comes directly after a period of time where they've had hold of Brendan since they took him out of school. What time did they take him out of the classroom? They've had him since then. It's all wrong.
It is. More
It's
secretive,
all wrong.
hidden portions of this that they are not willing to release that information. Nobody who partook of that evening has said a word.
What I discovered not so long ago, listen, about 8 months ago, 9 months ago, is that Wiegert and Fassbender had both attended a training course organised by somebody or other, and the title of the training course was to bring up-to-date awareness on the interview techniques of young people. Now, involved in that would have been some kind of instruction, at least in policy, of how to estimate a person's cognitive ability. Now, they've done all of that. They've gone through all the rest of the training in how to conduct an interview with a young person. They've been signed off as having completed the training. And then Fassbender goes on Dr. Phil and says it's not my job to assess IQs. Well, I'm very sorry, but that's a fucking lie, because I've seen a document that says you've just completed a training course that says you are fucking trained to assess young people's IQ. And I think to myself, how did they ever get away with it? Why is there no more noise being made about this? It's all wrong. Everything about it is wrong, and nobody's asking questions. The FBI should be all over this, and
I agree. 100%.
FBI should be crawling all over this.
That's right. And
Never mind
the worst part is
never mind your presidential fucking scandals, your Obama scandals. Get into your Brendan Dassey scandals, your Rodney Reed scandals, and all that kind of shit. Yeah, there's your garden.
Yeah.
Tidy up.
Yep.
Get your own house in order before you go shouting at other people.
And
But do it.
you bringing that up, it makes me realize, the new rules or policies could not have been fresher in their mind than with Brendan Dassey case, because that was the next
This
one up.
all this COVID shit, it's all deflection. Trust me, they're scared. They are really scared. They're trying to take attention away from Brendan Dassey and Stephen Avery. They know all the paperwork's in there. It's down to a judge's decision. If this comes back with an adverse judgment as far as Stephen Avery's concerned, I wonder. I'm very suspect. I'm very doubtful. It's a massive machine. It's come this far. It's not going to give up yet. It's not going to give up yet.
No.
They're
Well,
not
I will
done
say
yet.
this. Wizard, I
There's a long
think
fight.
Brendan's Brigade is an awesome idea, and it needs to be a really an outlet that we utilize in every possible way where Brendan's concerned. And I really appreciate the fact that you have such a passion for this, because all of us do and don't know what to do with that energy. And I think this is going to help us all refocus in a good, meaningful way some of that negativity.
Well, considering my kind of background, I've got a couple of boys around Brendan's age. One's 34, one's 32, and if I hadn't have changed my life, those boys could be leading very different lives to the lives they're leading today. And it's because Brendan has had all of that opportunity, all of that promise, all of the excitement and the adventure of living his life taken away from him. That's why I'm angry. That is exactly it. I had it and I fucked it up. I done prison time and all the rest of it. Brendan's never pulled the wings off a fly. Why pick him? It's because they know they could.
It was an opportune moment for them, and they took full advantage of it, and they didn't care who they stepped on.
Yeah, if I could just comment, Wizard, he was the weakest link.
Yes, he was.
And
right, he was.
Yeah, we know that both, or especially we get question Jody, basically trying to get Jody to flip, and she wouldn't bite into it. She wouldn't go against her fiance at the time. And the next weakest link down the chain was unfortunately Brendan, but it really started before Brendan. It started with Kayla, right? Because Kayla talked to her counselor about certain things, and then the counselor must have spoken to the investigators, because then the investigators talked to Kayla in front of Candy and Earl, and it then we get said, well, we now have to talk to Brendan again. So therefore, they got their avenue, they got their person in focus.
Well, and counselors are mandatory court reporters.
That's
so they have to report
right.
anything.
They've got safeguarding responsibilities even back in 2005, which is exactly the reason I've got the problem with the school teachers who allowed Brendan to be removed from the school. That should never have happened until Barb was summoned to the school. They should have summoned Barb.
So even back in that,
they should have never.
Those are the responsibilities that, any school educator should have, because the child is the responsibility of the educator, and Brendan should never have been handed over without a fight.
He should have never left that school.
Right.
At least until Barb got there. At the very least.
Well, what I want to know is what was their legal obligation in this situation for allowing someone else who is not his legal guardian to remove him from that property?
See, when they go if I've got it correctly, the only authority they possess even as the principal investigating officer, the only authority they have walking into the school They don't have any authority. The school supersedes the authority. The school can refuse to hand Brendan over without the confirmation of the parent or the presence of a parent.
A child that is in school in the United States has a liaison, however you say that. I know I'm not saying that right, but they have one that is to advocate for them. They call them
That's right.
school counsel.
They should never have allowed him to be removed from the premises.
Never. He should
Never
have
in their life.
never left that building.
No way.
But is it not the school district's responsibility to inform the child's legal guardian if such
It's
a
the
thing comes
headmistress or
up?
That
And
somebody else is removing their child from the
Yes,
school, right?
they don't have
The principal,
permission from the legal guardian.
it's the principal officer of the school. It's their responsibility. It's their job to
No.
make sure that
No,
the
you got
parents
that
are
wrong,
notified.
Richard.
Really?
You got
Over
that
here,
wrong.
over here, it would be the
It's
head
the
teacher.
counselor. It is the counselor, the school counselor for
Actually, you've got a
that
point there,
grade
yeah.
that is responsible for him. They should
She's the
have not been able to question
That's
him
correct.
or remove him from the school without that counselor's consent. And he
Well,
cannot
that's correct.
consent without the parents' consent.
That's right.
Well, as I
And-
understand it, they are legally entitled to question him, and they could have. Well, I think in Wisconsin they can question him. But yes, you're right. As the
Well-
primary caregiver in Brendan's case, the school counsellor was responsible for him, at least in respect of this matter, at that moment and in that time.
Well,
I mean,
And the
I
thing
know
is-
Wisconsin does have some crazy laws, but everywhere it is set up for a counselor at the school to intervene in anything like that that has to do with a child during school hours.
Yeah, welfare law.
ooh. And their
Students
pants
do.
weren't on fire. Their pants weren't on fire. They could have easily waited until he got home and went and taken him from his home.
Wrong. So I target him at school. That was just
It's
despicable.
an underhanded move.
That is despicable.
It certainly was.
They've planted the idea in the heads of every kid in Brendan's class that there's something bad going on, because everyone knows Teresa's missing. This is for 4 months after the event.
Yep.
December, January, February, yeah, end of February, beginning of March.
And everybody knows his uncle's sitting in jail,
It's
Yeah.
wrong.
involved in this in
They're
some
all
way.
presuming he slaughtered this woman already by this point.
Yeah. So they're all going home saying, oh, Brendan was arrested at school today. Brendan who? Stephen Avery's nephew. So everyone's going to get the idea. How quickly do you think that's going to spread? That's going to look, what? That's going to go mad. Fucking hell.
Yep.
Yeah,
And every
everyone's
other
gonna know
parent out
about
there
it.
is going to be like, you stay away from those people, you know. It's
There will
already
be
a
some students
dark cloud.
there will be some students with their noses up to the window until they see Brendan being driven away in the back of a police car.
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to go home and they're going to be talking about that for weeks and months and years afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
And
Well, I think it's obvious they took him from the school because they
Brendan-
didn't want his mother involved
Brendan
in it.
was condemned before they even removed him from the school. They knew what they were doing with
I think
Brendan.
so too. Because if you really think about this, and like you said,
They fucking
Wizard, this
knew
is
what they were doing.
they had an audience of people there that were going to continue to spread that word of this perception they had going about Stephen Avery and his
It only
family
takes a
members.
drop of poison to spoil a pool.
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly how they achieved it.
So this here is your introduction to Brandon's Brigade and kind of what it's going to look like. and it will progress.
I
Is
hope
anyone is
I
anyone
don't want
who's
to keep
here?
sharing.
Is anyone who's here that hasn't got a chance to say anything? Want to add
Come
some
on,
input?
everybody, speak up, say something. Come on, join in.
Yep, this is, you're more than welcome to jump in at any time.
Kay, Kenneth,
Jack, Ron.
Rhonda.
We're gonna call you out.
Everly,
I'm good. You guys just keep going on.
come on, peeps. Speak
I'll
it
try
up.
and keep my mouth shut for a minute, give everyone else a chance.
Me
Well,
too.
Wizard, I really think you've done such an excellent job to put out your intention here, and I really appreciate it so very much.
Although I always like all the positive about Brendan, I'm glad you're doing this because it does need to be talked about. There's so many new people coming. It really needs to be talked about. Besides that, it's a real good therapy thing.
I often feel that Brendan's a little bit overlooked. Is
I do too.
the scale of what has been done to Brendan is not. It's not it's not prosecutorial. It's personal. Those two officers have taken it upon themselves to subject Brendan to that abhorrent behaviour, and it's just appalling
detectives.
it's appalling that they can go in front of national TV and spout the bollocks that they have.
Yeah,
It's disgraceful.
Yeah, it is, and they're still getting away with it.
They are, and it's well. I hope they aren't getting. I hope they're not getting away with it for so long.
I said this yesterday.
The world
on
needs to wake up to what happened to Brendan Dassey. It is criminal. It's evil what happened to that boy.
Yeah, I said it on my thing yesterday. Whether Brendan knows it or not, he's been a catalyst for a lot of good from this really terrible thing that's happened to him. He has he has brought awareness of false confessions, what not to do. I mean, Brendan has been a catalyst for so many people to step up and be there for him. But the amount of evil that it takes for two men to sit in front of a 16-year-old child and say the things they did and tell them that it's okay, we got your back. I'm a dad, I'm your friend. Touch it in
I've got your back. I'm behind you, and I've got this hunting knife in my hand, and it's going right between your ribs and straight into your heart. That's what they were all about. That's exactly what they were all about. They might have, do you know what? You wouldn't treat a wounded animal like that. You'd take a gun out and you'd put the animal out of its misery. It would have been, I've always said this, and I know it sounds really cruel, and I'm going to say it again. This is the way I feel about it. Mark Wiegert would have done a kinder job on Brendan Dassey if he'd have drawn his gun and put 2 bullets through his head. Because what he's done to Brendan Dassey is worse than shooting him in the head.
That's right.
It's put him through a living hell. And Brendan doesn't fucking deserve that. Not one little bit.
Nope.
I've got
under
to
no circumstances.
I've got to go. I'm going to be back in a moment.
Okay. Well, it would not be acceptable in this day and age. In most places.
Actually, there's no safeguards in place anywhere to keep them from not doing this over and over again everywhere.
Well, it's pretty obvious. I mean, there are laws, but guess what? They only uphold the ones they want to uphold when they want to uphold them.
Yeah, we really need like some kind of advocacy.
Yes.
No one can say it. I screwed it up for everyone.
Advocacy. I can't even say it.
Yep.
Advocacy group.
Advocacy.
Yeah, but where, like the UK has, where there's somebody that has to go with the child when they have to go make a statement.
There are extremely strict, very harsh rules when it comes to interviewing juveniles in the UK.
We need that here.
Minnesota. They are.
All
You can't do
Yes.
you can't do none of that shit here in Minnesota. You would never get away with it. So being right next door to Wisconsin, what is going on?
Yeah.
Since 1984, interviews have been recorded in a very, very rigorous way. From the moment you're brought into the custody suite of a police station in the UK, everything is documented. Absolutely everything. You are
Now, see,
processed
that's
in
the way
such a
it
way.
is here. That is the
It's,
way it is here.
that's the way it's
But what
supposed to
makes the
be.
difference about that when you can take little portions of it and put it together to make what you want?
Oh no! Well,
And
it
that's
could that
exactly what they did to Brendan.
even in
Well, and
2005,
he was
video
under the new
recording,
law.
video
He was
recording was
under the
new
new law.
in Wisconsin. We've been making recordings since the 1980s. Every single interview
Well,
that has happened in the UK in a police station since the 1980s is video and audio recorded.
it was
So
part of
we've been
what
at it for years.
it was part of
We wrote the
whatever.
textbook.
It was part of whatever they had changed the Steve Avery bill into. I can't remember what they changed it into. But it was in part of that, the children's portion, where they said minors should have to be recorded, and he was the very first one
Right.
that fell under that law.
Yeah, but
That-
they took all them recordings and put little pieces of it together to make the statement they wanted.
Oh yeah,
But
and
a year
that's
before,
and that's a whole
but
other
a year
discussion.
before,
Oh
we
yeah.
wouldn't even had that. We wouldn't even had the tapes at all. There would have been nothing.
See how very important this topic is going to be. This could not be more needed. I mean, this is absolutely, there's so many different areas to put under the microscope, and that's exactly what we're going to do.
So, did anybody else have anything they wanted to say? Alice, Kay, Catnip.
I'd like to say thank you.
I mean, there was a few things that got me. I mean, I must admit, I have not watched or heard the rest of Brendan's interrogations other than what I've seen on MAM. But for me, that was enough.
Yeah.
And I knew right through when they had that way in that room, and after he's told everything, and it was the way he was speaking as well. You could any sensible person could tell that something wasn't right with his presence and things like that. And for them supposedly being seasoned officers and everything that didn't pick up on this, and who were fathers at the time and not police officers and everything like that, that Wayne's heat
Wrong.
must have been so far up his backside, it was unbelievable. And when he said about,
Sorry.
is this going to are we going to be done by the 6th hour because I've got a project due? I was like, oh my god,
Now,
you
Well, they
are
said they could
really
agree,
listening to this young boy who is a child, and you're taking his words for it, because I knew they were swallowing and feeding him. For what I could tell, we know knowing much about the case in itself, I knew what they were doing with that Wayne was wrong.
Right.
Absolutely.
well, that
And you're
statement
just
that
an
he
everyday
makes
person.
there, it says it all about
Right.
where his head is with this and his ability to understand the situation. That in and of itself says it all.
Yep.
Well, they say that his body actions were showing that he knew more. Sorry, his body actions look like, I really don't want to be here. I really don't know what you guys want. And, look like he was within himself.
Yeah.
And you don't have to be smart or educated or a specialist on children to see that. If you're a parent, like supposedly they are, you would notice something like that.
Yep. I mean, the fact that the way he was sitting, the way his posture was, he was a terrified child who were sitting in front of two authoritative people that he's probably been told for a young age to respect the authority of the law in some sense or another, and he was terrified. No, because he didn't, because he didn't know nothing, and they wanted him to say things, and when he was telling them the truth, they were telling him that he was lying, and that just wasn't right, and it didn't sit right with me at all.
I agree. I feel the same
I
way.
agree.
Yep.
I feel the same way. Yeah.
And it's hard for us
And
not to
I mean,
feel this way. You look at someone who was there that was vulnerable, and the vulnerabilities were pretty obvious to anyone watching. And
yeah,
then if you look at the full interviews, even more so.
yeah. Well, see, I couldn't bring myself to watch the rest of the interviews because I know for a fact my telly would have got broken,
Yeah.
and I can't afford to buy a new telly right now, so I couldn't afford to do that. So, but what I seen and what just from Ma'am was enough for me to decide then and there that they railroaded that way, and unbelievably so.
Yep. There's a whole lot to be said for Brandon. And like I said before, make no mistake about it, this will not be a pity party. This is Brandon's Brigade. And we're trying to get the message
Brendan.
out. The information needs to get out. And we need to do a little more, let's say, dissecting. Okay?
Yeah.
We have
It's
people
tough,
here
but-
with fury and passion. And it really, this needs to happen.
Brendan
It's
does.
tough,
Brendan
but
doesn't
I
need.
would recommend everyone to watch all of the interviews and see what Mark and Tom did.
I can't anymore. It's too heartbreaking for me, and I've seen that touch of the knee and the sandwich and the it's disgusting.
I have.
Yeah,
never
I
seen
can't
them.
watch it.
I've watched many police interviews online and on television programs and stuff like that, and I have never seen a more inappropriate interview in my life. It is absolutely unbelievable the way they conduct themselves during that interview. All of those interviews, really, they are just evil, because it's the only reason they could be doing that is because it wouldn't matter what Brendan said. Brendan was going to go down for it anyway. What they've done to Brendan that day is what Tom Kusurek done to Stephen in 1985. I don't care you didn't do it. I'm getting you for it anyway. That was them.
That is correct. That's exactly what they
That
did.
was Tom Kusurek all over again. All over again. So not only did he have to say it didn't happen, not only did he not have to say, oh, it didn't happen, no, I didn't mean any harm to anybody. He didn't have to say that, but he did to the news reporting crew. He did say that, oh, we didn't mean to hurt anybody, but, Stephen got locked up for 18 years. And the smile on his face. Well, when you look at Uyghur and Fassbender, that's Tom Kusurek all over again. Brendan, I'm your father. And I don't care if you didn't do it. I'm going to fuck you for it anyway. What kind of... What? Fucking evil.
Yeah.
Sorry about the language.
Hey, it is. It is what it is.
Can I just put in a controversial suggestion?
Oh, sure. We love them.
Yeah.
Okay, now let's have a look at this case. If Stephen Avery was not involved, how would Fassbender and Uyghur have reacted to Brendan Dassey? Take Stephen Avery right out of this equation. In other words, you have Teresa Horbach, who just disappeared. And you've got this young 16-year-old kid that walks in and says, I raped, I murdered, I burnt Teresa Horbach. How would the investigators have reacted.
Oh,
Remove Stephen Avery from the equation. Would it have been the same, or would it have been different?
Oh,
Different.
Very different.
Why different?
Because they would have tried to corroborate his story and at least find some factual evidence. And
Right.
as soon as they couldn't find any, they would have blown it off, I guess you'd say.
Right. So we know that nothing that kid said corroborated. Nothing. Yet he's sitting in prison for the rest of his life. So here's the deal. Is it because of Stephen Avery that Brendan Dassey is sitting in prison? Is it because Brendan Dassey was mere collateral damage?
Collateral damage.
Collateral damage.
It was definitely give Steve at all costs.
Yeah.
Because he was already convicted, wasn't he? When Brendan went in, they could have stopped Brendan from going to trial, correct?
Well,
wasn't Stephen convicted?
He was arrested. Stephen was arrested on November the 9th.
No, I mean the trial and the conviction when Brendan.
Yes,
yeah.
He was already
convicted,
correct?
They couldn't back out then because they
well,
made
then,
such a
you know
song
what?
and
They
dance
should have
about
dropped
it.
it. They should have dropped
They
it.
couldn't. They couldn't.
Yeah, they could have. There's no evidence.
Linda, they weren't going to do that because they needed
I know that.
backup testimony. You know, right?
So it ended up being that he was collateral damage.
Yeah, it's. I mean, it's not even. It's not collateral damage. I wouldn't give it as kind of benign a term as that. I would say that.
Well, I guess you can't even say that though. Can you? Because
I don't know. I can't describe it. I can't describe what they've done really.
It was get Steve Avery at all costs.
Yeah, I mean they did that press conference, so they did. I mean they did need that. Brendan's statements or whatever to make it look bad in the public, to make Stephen look guilty. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's horrible. Whatever it is, whatever you want to call it.
It isn't just the fact that they couldn't corroborate his story. The problem there actually is that they could prove everything he said to be a lie.
Lie. That's right.
I mean, he said they slit her throat, but she did not die. He said they had her handcuffed to the bed, and there was absolutely no evidence whatsoever to prove anybody was handcuffed anywhere in that room.
Correct.
And the handcuffs were toys. The handcuffs were sex toys.
Of evidence, everything he said that had a piece of evidence that should have corroborated it actually proved him to be lying.
Correct.
Common sense would have thrown it all out the window.
That you said the magic word there, Mose. Common sense. There wasn't any common sense. So here's the deal, right? This is reminiscent of what happened with Fredrickson and Ferguson in the Ryan Ferguson case. Exactly the same thing. You've got a kid that comes in 2 years later who says, "I've had a dream. Me and Ryan Ferguson, we murdered this guy." There was no forensic evidence that tied both men to the crime, yet both were sent to prison for life. Now, Mose, you hit the nail on the head. These investigators, if they were using common sense, they would have done all the mental checklist. They would have known that everything Brendan said made no sense whatsoever. And what is disgusting is this, and my final comment before I go. Fassbender told Stephen Avery exactly how the RAV4 got placed in the pit, that it had come from the quarry, it had gone through the deer camp, and he even said it followed the trails of the dogs. Brendan Dassey told them, "Oh, no. We brought in the RAV4 past my grandmother's house, past Chucky's house. We drove it that way." And if you look at the dog tracks, there's no dog tracks at all at that part of the salvage yard. All the dog tracks indicate that the RAV4 had come through the quarry area. Now, Fassbender knew that Brendan was completely, he had no idea what he was talking about. Yet, how come he didn't have the gumption to say, Brendan, go home to your mum. You know nothing about what's happening. It's because he was the collateral damage.
I think they
Yes, he
looked
was.
at this as a necessary evil.
Correct.
He was
To me-
the tool they needed to
me,
utilise to
they
get what
were-
they wanted.
So, to me, this is the most and I agree with Wizard, the most despicable act I have ever seen, because Fassbender and Wiegert knew Brendan was completely innocent,
Innocent.
but they
Absolutely.
couldn't let him go because it gave a narrative to what happened to Teresa, right? And their own forensic scientists went through the garage and went through the trailer with a fine-tooth comb and found no trace of Teresa Horbach. None. And there was no corroborating
Nada.
evidence anywhere, right? And you see, this is why I believe this forum is fantastic, because we can talk for weeks on all the mistakes that were made.
Well, these are not only going to, on the outside, somebody might be able to say they look like mistakes. We're fixing to point out how very unmistakable it was.
Two mistakes
Their
in the
actions.
same case might be a coincidence, but mistakes, no, not in a murder
No.
inquiry. It doesn't happen.
Well,
Not even in 2005. This isn't 1776. 2005, for Christ's sakes.
Correct.
well,
That is the state's problem right now. They are in such of a situation that
They can't
I
account it.
myself can say that was not a mistake. That was deliberate. And I'm sure that when it all comes down, the courts are going to have to say, hey, that was not a mistake. It was deliberate.
Yes. But I think, I know I'm pushing forward a little bit, but when you read the statements by the en banc judges and you compare Judge Rovner and you compare it to Judge Hamilton, they're on completely different pages, right? Judge Rovner was disgusted with what Fassbender and Wiegert did, whereas Judge Hamilton said, what problem? There's no problem whatsoever. So the underlying theme is this: if you continue with the Reed technique, children like Brendan Dassey are going to continually will be placed in prison for life on false convictions, on false confessions.
Yeah.
Well, and that was one of the things in the new law from PEG, was that they weren't to use the read. They were to videotape, and they weren't to use the read, and there was a few other things in there.
Yes, whereas the investigators used the Reed technique. Yes, they were subtle, but oh boy, they used all elements of the Reed technique on Brendan, and that poor kid got entrapped.
Yep. So they were breaking the new law right there.
Yes.
Just the ones that they made themselves.
I would like to mention the accountability here, the lack of accountability for these officials who are supposed to be, they're supposed to be following all of these rules and the rule of law, and they absolutely divert away from it at any given time when they choose to, and there is no accountability whatsoever. That needs to be discussed.
There are protocols in place to protect, or there are supposed to be protocols in place to protect the integrity of an investigation, but also to protect suspects and police officers.
Yeah, Roger.
From the risk of there being seen to be any fishy business going on. And yet, we are told that whilst the main protagonists in this little saga, Manitowoc County Sheriffs, have got no involvement in the case, they're all over it. And it's, fishy, stinks like a 10-year-old shark.
See, I think a little differently on that. I don't
Yeah.
think that they're all over it. I think this whole case revolves around the police.
Of course it does.
I think they made the whole entire case.
Okay, you guys. So I want to thank everybody here for showing up and for participating in this conversation and helping us introduce Brandon's Brigade. And there's going to be more to come. This too will be continued. And just we wait and see. This is going to take a new form, for Brendan. And I really have a lot of faith in society and humanity. And I think, this can be a good thing and we can do this. All of us together want to see as many people coming in on this as wants to. So much more to be said. And Wizard, I'm gonna ask you if there's any last words you want to say before I wrap this up.
Thank you, Sammy. I would like to take this opportunity to thank you all for taking part. We appreciate your patronage and your comments and your involvement. It's valuable, and it's what will make the podcast whatever it will become. We want it to develop, evolve naturally. So please feel free to make notes of your ideas during the week, and when we get together in a group later, we can discuss everything. So please feel free and welcome. We'd love your input.
Thank you, Wizard. Thank you, Sammy.
Thank you, Silkman.
Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor.
All right. Well,
Sorry, my typing.
Good night, Sean boy.
good night. Y'all have a good morning, afternoon, or evening, or whatever it might be. And we're just gonna say this is to be continued, and I am looking forward to this so very much. And I hope to see more comments about Brendan's Brigade. Come on and join us. We're gonna have some really good conversations, and that's
Help
it.
us fight the good fight.
Yeah. I mean, this is going to be excellent way for us all to refocus any negative energy. So come on in, join us. Foul Plays on YouTube, Discord. We have people out there that are Facebooking and tweeting. And
Join the
we
war.
have and Redditors out there. So just give us a look. Come on in, join us. We'd love to have you. And that's all I'm going to say. This has been a Foul Play production.